Welcome back. I'm now really pleased to introduce our panel for this final session of the day. Two faces will be familiar from earlier in the day, Ashwarya Tiku from UWS Students Association and Lewis Hill from the DRG at Strathclyde. I'm also really pleased to welcome two new contributors, Shona Littlejohn, Deputy Director, Student Experience and Widening Access from the Open University in Scotland, and Kevin Hamilton, Co-President for the Southwest region at Scotland's Rural University and College Students Association. So we'll kick things off with some questions. I do believe that Kevin is having some tech issues, so we will hopefully be able to accommodate that. First things first, I wanted to pick up a question that was posted in the chat earlier on from Eleni. I thought it was really great to capture it here in this space in the panel. So it seems to me that the presentation and engagement opportunities that these initiatives created did more than to center around student rep systems. It seems to me this was a channel to connect with other human beings in a time where this was quite difficult for many. I wonder whether when we start going back to campus, the digital element of participation might drop as a result. I wonder whether and how you would try and encourage the digital element if this happens. Ash, I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Firstly, I realize I haven't actually spoken throughout this whole thing. I've just been scribbling and taking notes. I'm on my 5th page now. But just a thought, we have so many discussions and meetings in UWS and my university, as I'm sure in other universities as well. And I don't think we'd actually lose, the digital element of participation. I don't think that will actually go whether we return to campus. And in fact, that might help to increase the engagement, because there are students who, as in Alistair's keynote presentation earlier said, who want that choice. They will want that option and being able to be flexible from their homes, whether it's caring responsibilities or families or just accessibility concerns, whatever it is. I don't think that it's going to go. I think universities are so keen to have this opportunity to now engage online as well as be on campus. So yeah, sorry, I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't think it'll actually ever lose what we have right now.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think it's about rethinking maybe what engagement looks like in this new blended digital space, and almost a simple maths problem of how many are in person, how many are online, and seeing what we come up with from there. But definitely going to be a whole new era for engagement. I'm told Kevin's managed to get back in. Kevin, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. It's been on.
No worries. I thought it would be great to get your view on this question. So I'll read it out because I imagine you missed it. So earlier on, Eleni posted, it seems to me that the participation and engagement opportunities that these initiatives created did more than to center around student rep systems. It seems to me this was a channel to connect with other human beings in a time where this was quite difficult for many. I wonder whether when we start going back to campus, the digital element of participation might drop as a result. And I wonder whether and how you would try and encourage the digital element if that happens.
Yeah, I do understand the question perfectly well, and I can understand the concerns. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact when we go back. I think it's opened up our eyes to what's possible in a digital platform. I think the engagement, certainly between student associations and unions, has been extraordinary this year, and it's actually gave us the opportunity to be able to engage with each other, and give us the opportunity as well to sort of dare I say it, steal ideas from each other and share that. And I think that that's been something that the student associations throughout Scotland has certainly not had in the past. I think we definitely need to keep this going. And just by being who we are, coming to these meetings, Sparks meetings, and certainly in the training sessions at the very start, and you get to meet these people, it's fantastic. I mean, I know for us, we had a freshers collaboration group with loads of colleges throughout Scotland, and we all came up with ideas together to do things, and that's going to continue. I think I don't think it would ever stop, because I think it'd be a loss for every college and university not to take the input from other student associations.
Definitely. I think it's removed those barriers and created a wider student community than we've ever really had the opportunity of having. There's always been that geographical barrier, thinking back to Alistair's presentation. But I like the stealing ideas. It reminds me of, we like to joke that our head of quality says it's only plagiarism if you're a student. And I think that rings true. We're not stealing ideas, we're sharing best practice. That's brilliant.
Yep.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question taken from the Padlet. This year has been a huge learning curve for everyone, and it's understandable that there have been hiccups along the way. What are the main mistakes, issues, hiccups that you think absolutely should be avoided as we move into next year? I wondered if we could come to you first, Lewis.
I think I might need a couple of seconds just to think about that one, actually.
No worries, take your time.
I meant perhaps someone might want to go first.
Oh yeah, no worries, happy to. Shona, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I would answer that by taking a slightly different approach. I think one of the things that's been really valuable about this year is that, collectively as a sector, if you like, and across the world, people have tried fast, learned fast, failed fast. And I think that has led us to a place where we couldn't possibly have believed we would have been 12 months ago. And I mean, reflecting back on the question that's just been asked, I think with a whole load of positives. So I think we need to be really careful that we don't go back to a sort of very fearful approach, that we're afraid to try things. So to me, the only thing that we should avoid is we should try and learn from others mistakes, what others have been through. So I think these kinds of sessions are absolutely key, where we can all learn from each other, as you say, adopt best practice, think about best practice in our very different contexts, because I think that's really, really important. But I guess I would just encourage us all to keep innovating, to keep experimenting. And if we do that, there will be mistakes, but there will also be a whole load of really valuable learning that we can move on from.
Really, really thoughtful. I like that, learning fast and failing fast. One of the key things that we always try to, key messages I always try and take forward is, that's what university is about. It's about learning from failure. And how else are you supposed to innovate if you don't learn from the mistakes? And it's not that the mistakes are the negative or something terrible that should be avoided. It's the lessons that you've learned from that and how you can improve. That's the only way enhancement works, really, is to find out where things are going wrong. Lewis, are you happy to?
I had to think about what was the best example of a mistake. And I think it was probably information overload. Sending out many emails in 1 week is perhaps not the best way to do something. Even if you want to highlight an individual event, and you think it's a brilliant event, you'll get to the point where people start to associate an email coming from a certain email address as just being a spam email, and they won't pay attention to it. So we decided to change from that to singular emails that would contain more information rather than just sending out multiple ones.
Definitely. I think that's been echoed across the sector, is information overload, is rethinking what our communication looks like and how best to communicate effectively. I think there's a lot that people have learned from that this year, and there's still so much more to learn, and we will keep learning from failure as time goes on, and that's the important bit. I like, that's a good point, Kevin. Sometimes too much information isn't helpful. Sometimes it's just got to be the right balance. Following on from Arena's presentation, do you think there should be more time set aside for teaching staff and student association officers or staff to share best practice, perhaps train each other on student engagement practices, something that could or should be included in staff development and officer training over summer? I'll maybe come to you first, Shona, for the teaching staff bit.
Yep, I saw that comment in the Padlet, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant suggestion. I think that's absolutely what we should be doing, learning from each other, overcoming the silos, if you like. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for partnership working between universities and colleges and their student associations. So that's certainly one that I intend to take away to explore further.
That's great to hear. Aishwarya, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think just a session like this has been so useful and the contributions have been, incredible. So why not continue this and share? I don't think you can actually prepare any student, association officer or staff, to be honest, in the next academic year and going forward. You can share whatever you went through, but um, I don't think you'll ever be fully prepared. So having training sessions and resources, I think I found more useful, like all the presentations. And I always message privately to ask, are we going to get the presentations later? Because sometimes just going back and reflecting and reading on such incredible work that's been done helps you to remember, especially when you forget and might not have the time to attend and get Zoom fatigued and all that stuff. So having, resources as well, not just the training sessions, I think that might be quite useful going forward.
Definitely. Never being fully prepared for the year ahead as a sabbatical officer, I think, is just the way the job is. You'll always be firefighting. As long as you've got that bank of resources to come back to, you're sorted and you'll be supported by everyone else. I wonder, Kevin, you spoke about, student associations linking up together. Did you have any thoughts on this?
I do. I think the staff, certainly from Shrux's viewpoint, it was really quite good at the start, before students came on campus. It all started a bit later last year as well. It gave us a little bit more time to engage with the staff about what we wanted, what the vision for the Students' Association was from a staff viewpoint. We didn't have training, so to say. I think that's something that definitely needs to be done. And I think it needs to be something that's put into a SAB, certainly for us, into the training package, how we know how to approach staff. Because sometimes that can be a bit daunting for a SAB as well. And how we can go about engaging with the staff to say to the staff, this is what we hope for the students. What do you hope for the students? What can we do? That's all I can say really on that point. I think everybody else has covered everything else.
No, I think that's really helpful. You all answered it so brilliantly. I wonder if, Lewis, you had any thoughts around the implications for the postgrad side, because it's often left out of the association and union conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the postgrad side of things is a very interesting topic for community building in general, because a lot of people are talking about how they've adapted to the COVID world, whereas in reality, there were struggles with postgraduate engagement prior to COVID anyway. So I think it's definitely a very different sort of sector of students. But I think events like this, of people coming together and hearing best practice, I think sometimes there's elements that do work for undergrads which can very quickly be adapted to postgraduates. So I think having events like this are very important.
It's about that breaking out of the silo, and just as we learn from other associations, we can learn from the different student groups themselves within our own institutions. And I think we very often forget just how much things are translatable between the different communities. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Following on, do you think it is more necessary this year than before to scope out what students will expect from the Student Association in the next academic year, as well as that discussions around how to manage those expectations? Kevin, I'll come to you first.
Sorry, it cut out for a second there. Would you be able to repeat that question for me?
Of course. Do you think it is more necessary this year than before to scope out what students will expect from the Student Association in the next academic year, as well as discussions around how to manage those expectations?
I think that's a really tough question. Just my luck for it to come to me first, I suppose. I don't think we can actually, because every year students are different. Even if you're getting returning students, it's a different experience, it's a different year, it's a different education that they're getting, really. So I think it's going to be really hard for us to gauge how that can be in the digital world for them. And I think it's really important that it's ever evolving to suit that in the future, but I don't actually think we can gauge how it's going to be. We can preempt it as much as we always have, but I genuinely don't think there's any way we can gauge exactly what that's going to be for the students at all.
So would you say that, working in an association is just reactive by nature? We always talk about how reactive this year has been.
Yes, I think so. And I think this year has proven that every association can be reactive in a speedy manner as well. Obviously March last year, it all kicked off and it started. I certainly started. All of us here probably have never had time to be on a campus, although I am today, which is a good thing. But I think it's very, very difficult. It is a reactive job. You have to go with what's happening at that point, and any new information that comes out, especially with COVID. It's, you know what I mean? If there's an outbreak on campus, you have to be reactive to that, and we can't gauge what it's going to be like in the future.
Absolutely. What do you think as well, Aishwarya, from your perspective at UWS?
I agree with Kevin completely, but I also think that what we've been trying to do is just identify some of the key trends and just see a lot of the concerns now that students are coming with. It's often the same thing, you know, even with society engagement and the kind of societies we're having, you know, sent in now and requests for having those are completely different to as they were before, of maybe, I don't know, in-person things that required you to go out and be in person, like Squirrel Society. I don't know, we had one, I swear to you. But now it's different. It's more things of connecting with each other. It's more academic. It's more games online and stuff like that. And so I think just keeping an eye, being alert, like monitoring, and again, it's sharing. It's just reaching out to other associations, not just here, but around the world, and seeing how other universities, you know, and what they're doing and how they're trying to cope might help as well, in coming up with something innovative and not just sticking to what we already did this year. That might help.
So even though, you know, COVID means you have to be quite reactive because everything changes quickly, there is some element of being anticipatory that you can still maintain.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And another question from the Padlet: all speakers have spoken about student engagement, but is there any indication as to if any groups of students aren't engaging, for example, school leavers or mature students, thinking those possibly at opposite ends of the spectrum and not necessarily tech savvy? I'll come to you first on this one, Shona.
I think that's a really great question. I don't have specific demographics at my fingertips in terms of engagement, but I think it is really important that we do understand the data. What I do know for sure is, as many of you will know, the Open University is a unique institution. Our sort of way of learning, if you like, is focused on part-time supported distance learning. Our student cohort tends to be older, and we certainly have a lot of that age group engaging very, very actively online. So I don't think it's as simple as sort of saying it's more mature students that don't engage. That's certainly not our experience. I'm sure there are some mature students that don't engage. So I think it's important that we both understand the demographics there and engage to understand to what extent it matters. So for example, we know some of our students, because they're juggling so much, they're studying part-time, perhaps the extracurricular activities are less important, but they will engage online with their academic communities. So I think it's a sort of more nuanced and complex picture, perhaps.
No, completely agree. I think one of the things that has definitely come out this year is just how much people expect the younger generations to be quite tech savvy. And I've seen students and reps that I've worked with not even understand how to work their Outlook calendar. So it's definitely not equal across all groups, and that nuance definitely needs to be applied. I wondered from the postgrad perspective, Lewis, is there anything around that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question to answer, because I think the types of people that don't engage may well be doing it for the complete opposite reasons. So if you've got a student who has everything under control, they've got a great support network, they have flatmates they get on with, they may not engage with these events just because they don't see the benefit. But then at the other end, I think there's a level of amount of problems that a student has that once you get past that point, they actually just withdraw completely. So it's very difficult to ascertain who is it that's just super successful in what they're doing and who is it that's struggling, because they tend to be the ones that both don't engage. But something that we found, which has been quite interesting, PGRs at Strathclyde, they are, I think it's 60% male to 40% female. But at many of our events, we are seeing an equal amount of female to male attendees, which in theory is a good thing. But if the actual numbers are 60 to 40, it means that for some reason we are being much more engaged with by our female PGRs and not so much by our male PGRs, which is perhaps a bit of a problem. And you wonder if it is because they're struggling or perhaps because they're succeeding. You don't know.
That's definitely an interesting one. I'm sure there's so much research that could be done into the different engagement levels across groups in this year alone. It's really so much to think about. I do like the idea of a spectrum of engagement. That's something I've always tried to take and bring into conversations. Things like, before in pre-COVID, when, the big discussion was around surveys and all of that, and thinking of, if you're getting a 10, 15, 20% participation rate, is that really reflective of the full spectrum? Or is that mostly, just the very engaged who want to praise everything that's gone well, or the people who've absolutely hated their experience and want to have a rant? And how do you then capture and fully understand the middle? So is your data really reflective? And the same goes for these online, for participation in these online spaces. Really interesting. Kevin or Aishwarya, do either of you have any thoughts on it as well?
Yeah, I was listening to Lewis there, and I think that was a great point. And I have to say that I think we do need to be aware that people might not need it. And it is about just letting them know we are here. And it's about, sometimes it's not about the engagement, it's like, dare I say the word, just to let you know, I'm a business student, so I use the word marketing quite a lot. It's about the marketing of what we do, and it's about putting it out there and saying to them, you know what, we are here. You can come to us, you can do this, because who are we to sit and say, you need it, you need it, you need it? We can't say that. That's not something that we can do. All we can do is say, we are here. The door's open, I genuinely believe that. I think that was an amazing point, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to say to Lewis thanks for that, because I think it's something that everybody needs to bear in mind, that we do genuinely have the opportunities there. However, it's up to them whether they take it or not, and we can't judge it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's the important bit about associations and unions, is we're here if you need us, but ultimately we don't want you to have to come use us. We want you to be perfectly well supported without us and get on brilliantly and never have to come through our doors because you've got a mitigating circumstances or complaint or appeal that you need help with. That's our dream, is to never have you come through our door in that way. But if you come through for the social spaces, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Aishwarya, did you have anything to add?
No, Alex, just echoing kind of what everyone said. And it's just funny to hear you say that our dream would be to have no student actually come through and say, oh my gosh, I need your help, because it's in a negative or in a way that they're in any distress. But, where they're coming in saying, we just want to use your social spaces and network and kind of connect with other students. That would be a dream come true.
It's definitely one of the hardest parts of the job, is those difficult situations you have to work with students through. In terms of, students who are more difficult to engage with, what would be your top tips for getting those students involved in activities? Whoever wants to take this one first. You all had such fantastic ideas and contributions to that last question. Lewis, go for it.
I think a large part of it is sort of putting yourself in their shoes, because I think a lot of the time events are organized, even if you've got a panel of people, they're organized based upon what that panel thinks people want. But quite often the people that are hard to reach, they're hard to reach because you're just not, in terms of your mindset or experiences, not like them. So you have to put yourself into that position and think, okay, so what would they want rather than what would I want?
Definitely. I think that level of empathy and understanding is something that everyone's really still trying to get to grips with. It does come back to Shona's point about there being nuances to each individual group, and it is quite hard to do a catch-all approach. I wonder if Shona, you had some more to add?
Yeah, I think maybe building on that, because I think that was an absolutely brilliant point, Lewis, and I think it can even go further. And I guess it picks up on what Cher and Sarah were talking about in terms of sort of nothing for us without us. So I don't think that was the phrase they used, but it's the phrase that we use. It's the same kind of thing. How do we really engage those hard to reach groups in understanding what would be of value to them? So it's even more than putting ourselves in their shoes. It's giving them the opportunity to design and develop, I guess. And I think the other important thing is around the sort of the scaffolding of events. I think digital communities, we can get very hung up about the techie side of things, the platforms we're going to use, all of that stuff. But I think it's still about the sort of the person-centered side. How do we bring some of the quieter voices in, perhaps?
Definitely. Or Lewis, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just had another point that I realized. I think it's also about trying to ascertain why they're not engaging. And I think one of the problems that various associations sometimes have is that they'll take strong stances on certain topics, which may be political topics and things like that. And then they may find that on an unrelated event, they don't have such a great engagement from certain demographics. And it may well be that the past politics that they have held have influenced people's opinions on whether or not they want to engage or not.
Yeah, the holistic view of what you're offering is, and also your stance and how it impacts is quite an important one. And it is also so difficult when you have, you know, huge swaths of students that you represent and you try to do it most effectively, but still taking into account the impact that certain issues may have on different groups and how that plays out. It's I think the eternal challenge of associations. We did get another question coming in through the chat. Thinking about the future, we've been talking about Zoom fatigue, especially during COVID. From your experience and through your role and engagement with students, what types of fatigues do you anticipate in the near future? I'll come to you, Aishwarya, first.
Honestly, Alex, I think students and myself, again, so students and officers, if I'm allowed to say so, I think it's the fatigue of just being in back-to-back lectures or meetings, or even if it's networking and you're so excited and you want to stay on, which I know will happen after this, and have a little bit, room of everyone just chit-chatting with each other, but you're so tired because you've already been on this all day. And you've got something else later. And I think I'm just concerned for that fatigue not being addressed. And instead of going, okay, we have seen for the last year and a half or so, let's keep room in between, which I can assure you is a real thing. If we were on campus and in person, you'd have 30 minutes in between your meetings or so to walk from class to another place, to your office, to the cafeteria, etc. And now you can't, because you're at home, you're expected to just be available all the time. And that does get quite, exhausting. And I'm just worried that would have an effect later on in terms of health, mental health, and all of that. So I just hope that can be addressed and be considered now, all of us here today.
Oh, definitely. It seems long were the days when a 2-hour lecture was the worst part, and the longest, most draining experience I ever had. And now it's quite regular to be in meetings from 9 to 5, or pretty much back to back with little to no breaks. So it's definitely the ease of access and everyone being instantly accessible at our fingertips has definitely brought on, I think, more problems than it may have solved. Kevin, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said. I think it's really important to be aware that ourselves, as well as the students, are definitely exhausted from this. And fatigue, it happens to us all. We tried a few different things to emulate what would happen. At Structure, we done a speakeasy. We did these sort of things where, they can go in and they can talk about what they've done at the weekend. But you're right in what you're saying. They don't want to come on. So we then done something that was a little bit different, and it did work, and it was a cook along, because what do you all have to do every night? You have to cook, you have to eat your dinner. Unfortunately for me, I was the one running it. It was quite good. I learned that I can actually cook some decent stuff. So we done this, and that created an engagement that we never thought we would get. We're hoping it'll kick back off this year, but the cook-alongs were fantastic because everybody needs to do it. And it made it a little bit fun. And I think that takes the fatigue out of it. And I think, unfortunately, they're sitting through lectures. SRUC have usually, certainly at degree level, 2 lectures a day for 3 hours, 3.5 hours long, sitting staring at a screen. I don't know about anybody else, I'm not going to take that in, at all. And the fatigue's real for students. It puts them off. It does put them off. It puts me off. That's why I deferred. I was like, I can't do this for another year. I can't do it. But that's the truth of the situation. And that's the way we need to look at it. It's about, to get that engagement through fatigue, you need to resonate with them. Through everything we've said, you need to find something that they would do. Who's going to want to come on at 7 o'clock at night to do a quiz? Not as many people, because they've been there all day. They've been there for 5 hours. They're like, I need a bit of headspace. I need to stop looking at this. It's just about doing these things. It doesn't always involve them sitting staring at a screen. You know, you can cook, look at something else, but you can still interact. You can still hear people. You can still talk to them. And I think that that's a really important factor that we need to take into consideration with the fatigue. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think thinking of both of your points, one of the things that, was always the worst part of my day after sitting at my desk for, 8 hours in meetings was thinking, great, now I have to get up and go and cook some food. So instead I did what everyone else does, went on Deliveroo or Just Eat and ordered something in. So doing something more interactive like a cook along is a fantastic way of really getting people engaged and giving them a reason to still do those things and combat that fatigue. So I think that impact really resonates through that. I don't know if Lewis or Shona, you had any thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think there is going to be a feeling of general fatigue. I think we've all got quite used to not having to commute to work and things like this. And then suddenly many people are going to be going back to having to commute half an hour or longer. So immediately you've lost an hour of your day. If you think how quick it is to sign on to a meeting just from your desk, but if you're constantly having to walk to different meetings in different parts of the campus, suddenly we're going to become a lot less efficient at actually the number of working hours that we have and also the number of free hours that we have after work. And I think that's going to be quite a big hit to a lot of people because there's also going to be a huge want to be out socializing again, doing lots of different activities. And that's all stuff that we kind of haven't really been doing for the past year. So I think that there's going to be a big shock coming when we actually do return to normal.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the things as well is people might actually be using their annual leave as annual leave. I don't know about anyone else, but every time I did take a day off, I just ended up working because I'm at home, my computer's here, my work's here. And we heard the same thing from students is that they found it really hard to shut off at the weekends because their home space is their study space. So they just felt they had to keep studying all the time, 24/7. And so it'll be really challenging for everyone to get back into a new normal where there is boundaries between your work and your social life. And it'll definitely be a tricky one to figure out. Shona, did you have any thoughts as well?
I think they've all been brilliantly made points. And I guess the only additional thought is I think it is about being conscious and aware of those fatigues. And I guess everybody taking responsibility for self-care and well-being. So I think that's just going to be so important for all of the reasons that everybody's mentioned.
Definitely. Thinking of your role at the Open University, how can we ensure the accessibility enhancements digital spaces have provided are not lost in the new normal?
I think that is such an important question. And I think particularly when we think and reflect on the pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic have been so unequal. And it's really important that we think about accessibility and equality as we build back, if you like. And I think that's a really important ethos of the Open University, and certainly one of the things that attracted me. So I think it is going to be absolutely key that we don't lose all of the benefits that we've found during this period, that we don't just throw everything away and go back to how it was before.
Definitely. Aishwarya, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, particularly in the perspective of what maybe a digitally blended student community looks like.
I was just in the middle of typing a whole thing, but I'll leave that there and I'll answer this separately. I think I mean, from what we've heard from students, even just something like celebratory events, graduations and being able to come in on campus and missing out on the kind of lived experiences. So we often talk about this in stuff like decolonizing the curriculum and all of that. But what about just the lived experiences of what was a normal life before? And I was just in the middle of, again, typing this of what has been like a normal 20 odd years for myself, at least, is now, has completely changed. But as long as, universities and we continue following kind of government guidelines of what blended learning would look like and actually have it as blended learning and not just call it that, but then keep everyone online. I think students would appreciate more. It's the transparency of everything as opposed to just universities trying to benefit from the, cutting of costs, etc., and all of that, which we understand. But again, this is something, it's a huge thing for an international student like myself. I'm stuck here in Zambia at the moment, but I know what I'm missing out, and I know how much I miss being there, meeting new people all the time. And I do enjoy being home, but I can imagine other students that have never left home. And this was their whole kind of journey and what they've been looking forward to for as long as they could remember. So yeah, I just hope that that's going to, be considered going forward in hybrid or blended learning.
Definitely. No, really important points to capture. Unfortunately, we were coming to the end of the panel session. It's so sad we didn't have more time to chat with all of you. You have such incredible insights, really useful thoughts on this. So I thought just before we close this off, I'd go around, we'll just keep it simple in alphabetical order, and maybe go through what your top 3 tips to your staff, be it university senior staff, Students Association, PGR, reps or supervisors, on developing digital communities beyond the pandemic once return to campus happens. So in alphabetical, we'll just come back to you, Aishwarya.
Okay, I'm going to try and keep it short and just think. So you said top 3.
Top 3.
Okay, I think the first one I would say would be to definitely engage. I know it's difficult, but I would recommend everyone, whether it's staff, students, whoever it is, to engage as much as you can. Like we are learning. This is the time and the kind of era for us to learn and grow. And we can only come out of this if we are, engaging in all sorts of things together. The second would be probably to be brave. I think everyone's just become a little bit more reserved, a bit scared with everything that's happening, and I can completely understand. I felt like that for the longest time with the pandemic, but just knowing that we've got so many people that are going through the same things as me helped me to get through my work, and hopefully return to my studies. So I could hope students do the same. And I think the third one would just be enjoy this while this lasts, because it is nice to have your coffee from and just grab it in 5 seconds, be able to just relax and turn off the camera whenever you just feel like, okay, just want to not look at the screen for a second. So I think just enjoy it while you can, rather than always seeing it as something that's an awful thing, which might not be. So,
Absolutely.
thank you, and thank you to everyone for today.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Kevin.
I wrote something, and it sounds cheesy, but it's true, just to encourage them and understand that the situations are different for them. I would try to find a lot more online activities, like, you've got these treasure hunt rooms, you've got these mirror rooms and things you can all do online as well now. And the third one would just take every day as a school day. If it's not working, like today, if your internet's not good, it's a learning experience. And I think that's the biggest tip that I would give, is every day is a school day, even for us.
Absolutely. Lifelong learners, and patience is a virtue. Over to you, Lewis.
Yes, I just wrote 3 down quite quickly. I think one's already been used, but the first one is to really be brave with what you're doing. Don't be afraid of just trying something completely brand new and just going with it. And if it flops, it flops. It might be successful. The next one, leading on from that, is to be reflective, but also resilient. So if you do have something that flops, think, okay, why did it flop? How can we change it? But don't be put off by that failure. Just like, okay, fine, that didn't work, moving on. And then finally, again, leading on, is just to be adaptive. So actually just looking at what you've done and moving in the direction where things seem to be working, and moving away from things that didn't.
Absolutely, completely agree. And to finish us off, Shona.
I think keep building inclusive digital communities. Inclusion is so important. Keep innovating, and above all, keep sharing. I think today's been absolutely fantastic, and a huge credit to you for chairing, Alex, to Megan and QA Scotland for bringing things together, and to all the participants. It's been absolutely inspiring. It's been a brilliant session. So just a massive thanks to everybody. It's been a privilege to be part of. Thank you.
And thank you. Honestly, it looks seamless from my perspective, but I couldn't do it without the incredible support staff I have behind the scenes of Megan and our trainers from Sparks and Caroline from QAA Scotland. It's honestly been a pleasure. And thank you all for coming along. Thank you to our panelists, to our presenters for your contributions over the whole day. I know everyone has really valued it. As Megan has been saying throughout the project lead up, this is the event of the year for sure. A fantastic sharing, best practice sharing event, and I've learned so much, and I hope everyone here has gotten some great ideas to take away. I couldn't have summed up the day better than our panelists did in those lessons and those takeaways from today. So just be brave, I think, is a fantastic one, and the key to being innovative is learning from failure. So think about those groups and don't be afraid to fail. I'd like to thank all the attendees for coming, and please be sure to check out the Enhancement Themes website, where the recordings from the day as well as presentations will be uploaded. And there will also be, we will also be producing a written resource full of case studies showing best practice in digital communities. And this will include all of today's speakers, plus some new examples from across the sector. So thank you all so much for coming along and ending just on time, so punctual throughout the day. Thank you and have a great one.